along with Ashaki Jackson and our friend Alice Dixon, who lives up in the Bay Area. There's also a team of people who organize all our events, and Lauren Egger-Crow is part of that leadership team, and she's here with us today. So the three of us are here for your support. If you have any questions after this workshop or during any part of today, you can talk to the three of us. Also, another one of our leadership team is coming in, Rachel Barecki. She'll be coming in an hour or two, so she'll be here as well. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. Today we're having a workshop with Noriko Nakada and Jamie FitzGerald on writing while caretaking. We called it that. It first came to light thinking of writing while mommying, but we're always looking for ways to be inclusive, to be more inclusive, so we've been calling it caretaking to think of all the ways that we, women identifying non-binary writers, are caretaking of other people. We're kind of called on to do that a lot in our lives, so that's why we're calling it that. Just a little bit about our workshop leaders. Noriko is a middle school teacher, thank you, and she's also a wonderful writer. She's working on a manuscript right now of nonfiction poetry, right? Yes, memoir. She's also a poet, and we're excited to have her here. And a mother of two. Thank you. And then Jamie is also with us. She is the director of the LA Office of Poets and Writers. Is that correct? Yes. So she's our poets and writers. She works with poets and writers. She's the person you talk to if you're trying to get a workshop, funding for a workshop, or if you're trying to get funding for a reading in this area, and also other states besides California, basically the western states. She's the person you talk to for that. So that's really exciting, and we love. I love poets and writers, and I've used and worked with them often, and I love that Jamie's here. She's also the mother of two. She's also a wonderful, beautiful poet, and so they will talk about how they keep writing and their caretaking going, and balance sometimes. I'm sure we're all struggling with that. Some people I want to thank is this couldn't happen without the Center of Cultural Innovation with support from the William and Flora Hewitt Foundation. Also, I want to thank Eugene Owens, who is a librarian here at Exposition Park Regional Library. Thanks to him and this space, this was totally free today, so that's why we're here and they're hosting us. And also, I want to thank our fiscal sponsor, Avenue 50. So without further ado, we have Noriko and Jamie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. All. We didn't really decide who was going to talk what.
Yeah. So yeah, we cobbled together this presentation in breaks from parenting. Sat down for breakfast, tried to figure out, okay, so what do we have to say about this topic? And we both kind of have different takes that overlap quite a bit. But say, I'm going to just read a little because there we go. I can be there. But we thought it would be a good idea for everyone to just think and write just for a couple seconds, a couple minutes about all the ways that you take care of others. And we think as mothers, that becomes a huge role, but there are so many other ways we also take care of others. As an educator, I also take care of others. Jamie's work also has her taking care of other writers. Can also be family, siblings, parents as they age. Those are some of the other ways that we all take care of others. So just think a little bit about how caring for others can create struggles for your creativity. So just write for a minute about that.
So I thought we could go around and just quickly introduce ourselves, and maybe you could say who you take care of apart from yourself, which is a full-time job anyways. So could we start here at this table?
I'm Stacy, and I girls ages. I'm Maria, and we like to take care of. I'm a teacher, as my students, take care of my partner. I think it's very complicated, but yeah, those are just so I take care of him and our house.
I'm Chris, and I'm not a caretaker. I have probably gone out of my way to avoid being one because I grew up as the oldest of 7 kids, and so I made a conscious choice not to be a caretaker.
I'm Denise, and I have a 3-year-old and a 27-year-old, and then my elderly mom. My parents don't
Hi everyone, I'm Shani. I'm one of the Submit co-founders. I'm not responsible for anyone except myself and my lungs. Horrible. I'm Carla. I was a single mom for the field. Well, he's not trying to do that, but my son is so proud. And I also have students now today. But it's not the same. Until October, this the end of September, I'll be tired. I really think that the exact date. It's just very tough, yeah. And so now it's like a real change because how you're trying to feel that people when you're not as direct.
Nice job, and I have two boys, 15 and 15, and I take care of my mom, and I take care of my house, and I like the food empty for any food, grocery shopping, meals, so a lot of food related things like my mom. So my mom and my dad come out away and I do I'm not ready to
the daily basis, we're responsible pretty much for myself and my parents. From a distance, it would be my mother, my grandmother, the weekend, in terms of like financial, that's just like about 15 years now. I was more emotionally, I just initiated a conversation with the company. And I was a substitute teacher. And I was going to tell just like 1 day at a time. I want to be there for them in a way that's like somebody was raised through a measure of safety or peace, but like my own needs, unfortunately, entry has to care for myself.
Thank you. So,
Okay. I'm Sochi, and I guess, yeah, I don't really caretake for people on a daily basis except for like my friends and my cat. I kind of am like, with my family, I'm kind of like very much like I have my stuff to do, and I kind of set that boundary. And then this organization, it takes a lot of time.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm also on the leadership team for Women's Event, and I am not a caretaker, but I have some thoughts about
So that's a wide spectrum right there. And I think like a lot of us are caretakers in our jobs, in things that we do for the community. Like Sochi said, she's not really a caretaker, but she does so much for the writing community that I think that alone counts as caretaking. So I was gonna maybe talk first a little bit, and I just wanted to start with a quote from this book called Writing Alone and with Others. It's by Schneider, and she's the person kind of behind this thing called the Amherst Writers and Artists Method, which is just a method of teaching creative writing. And I've been learning about it and reading her book. But she writes here something that I, as a parent, that I really understand. She says, with 3 preschool-age children, 2 still in diapers, I finally said to myself, it is over. I will never write again. I packed my typewriter away in the back of a closet in an upstairs bedroom. I quit. On a particular winter afternoon, I felt as if I would lose my mind. It was a day when all 3 babies were fussy, and nothing I could do was enough. We were all in the kitchen. It was cluttered with toys, baby formula, laundry, and breakfast dishes. Condensation on the windows closed all access to the outside world. A very painful kind of cry began in my mind. It was rhythmic, like a chant. In that desperation, where one does not observe oneself, I ran out of the kitchen, up the stairs 2 at a time, grabbed the typewriter, brought it down, and slammed it on top of the throbbing washing machine, the only cleared surface in the kitchen. With 2 babies playing on the floor, when strapped to the changing table, I pounded out a page-long poem. Although it did not say so directly, the meaning was, I will never write again. When I finished, I stood in a kind of shock, knowing 3 things. I had been writing. What I had written was not bad, and nothing, as long as I lived, would keep me from writing again. For years, I kept a typewriter in the kitchen. It sat on the ironing board, on the kitchen counter, on the dish cabinet. It sat on a kitchen chair, but it was there all the time, and there was paper in it, and often there were words coming and going on the pages. So I just thought that was a really wonderful illustration of just the kind of pressure that you come under as a caregiver to, you know, it's just sometimes often overwhelming and you feel like there's no room for anything to happen. But ultimately, the writing is what will save you from that situation. And that's kind of what I've come to find as a parent, is that the writing is actually the thing that saves me in those moments of despair when you just feel totally overwhelmed by your family and the demands placed upon you. Not just your family, your job, the world, everything, you know, that the 10,000 things that you wake up in the morning and that suddenly come upon you. It's the writing that saves me. And so in a lot of ways, becoming a caretaker has made me a better, more focused writer. And so, you know, that's one benefit of being a caretaker. But then you have to figure out, well, how do I do this then? You know, I was a writer who thought I need solitude to write. Well, I've had to compromise and I've had to get used to not having that in order to be productive. And so there are some things, you know, that I've had to learn and adjust to. And also for the writing, to make the writing happen, there are things that I have to give up, like perfect order in my home, a certain level of cleanliness, being able to stay on top of things, having a social life, going to literary events that my friends are having. There are just things that I can't do because my energy is precious and I have very little left at the end of the day for anything else, let alone my own writing. So I've had to be really careful about how to balance those things. I've had to fight. I've had to fight for a writing life. And so you'll find this as a caretaker. I mean, I think just as a woman artist, not only as a caretaker, it's not expected of you to be an artist. Nobody's going to be saying, yes, please go and do this thing, rah, rah for you, because it's just not one of the things that is expected of us. So I found that you have to fight for your writer self against forces that would say otherwise, or write that off and say, well, no, you're going to do these other things in life. So often these forces might be people you love, could be your partner who just doesn't understand that you have needs as an artist. So I've found that I constantly have to remind the people around me who I am. And that takes a lot of fierceness because at first it feels kind of selfish, but ultimately it's the thing that I found has enabled me to remain a writer, is just putting my foot down and fighting for myself. Telling my husband, I need this time, or, I need you to go out of the room so that I can concentrate, or, please, will you take the kids for this morning so that I can go do this thing for my writing life. And I am aware that that is a luxury that I have a partner who can help me with those things. And so one of the things that I was thinking about is if I didn't have a partner, what would I be doing? How would I get the help that I need? And I can't speak, for someone else in that situation, but I do have friends who they have to build networks of other parents, other caretakers. They count on their friends, they count on their family members. Sometimes you just have to pay for help. So there are these things that, as a caretaker, you have to contend with. How do you get that time? So another way I get the time is I just steal it wherever I can. If I have a lunch break at work, I'll make it a writing break. I'll have lunch and I'll write. If I have 10 minutes at the doctor's office, I might try to write something. I take whatever time I can get to do the work, even if it's like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes here. It actually adds up to quite a bit of work. And then when you do the rare moments where you get that chunk of time, that golden hour, you have something already there to go to, even if they're just little bits and pieces. And then that golden hour can be even more productive. So I don't want to talk for too long, but I feel like I'm kind of rambling. The other things that I do are things like this: Women Who Submit. Surround yourself with like-minded people who are supportive, positive, who will uplift you in your work. And so for me, Women Who Submit has been one of those touchstones that have enabled me to stay focused on the writing. I also did the thing called The Grind, which is an email group that you can sign up for. where you write every day, and it's just an accountability group. So you don't have to critique anybody's work, you just have to send something every day. And for me, I thrive on responsibility. So, you know, like if I know that I have to be accountable to somebody else, I will do it. But if I don't have to be accountable to anybody else, it's a lot less likely that I'm going to do it. So that worked for me. It doesn't work for everyone. But that's one of the things that has really helped me. So I just want to read, if I can find it, a quote that speaks to that very thing. Another one from Pat Schneider's book. Find and keep in contact with other writer-artists who can provide you with an intimate community and support, give you honest, critical response, strengthen you, and encourage your work. I think that is so important and vital. And often also as caretakers, we become very isolated. We become enclosed in our own little bubble of responsibilities. So having that community of support really helps to decrease your sense of isolation and make you feel connected and empowered.
All right. Thank you. So many of the things that we've talked about when we were discussing this overlap. And so I kind of came up with 3 major things that I do to try to make sure that my identity as a writer didn't get lost in my identity as a caretaker, as a mom, as a teacher. Because I find that I take care of my students and I take care of my kids, and if I don't make a very conscious effort to take care of my craft, that it becomes like the last priority. So how do I take care of myself as a writer in the midst of all the noise of the world? And so the other thing I came up with is also stealing time. And there are a couple quotes from this Elizabeth Alexander On Being podcast. So if you've never listened to On Being, listen to it. It's a great car ride eat up. And she spoke with Elizabeth Alexander, and she quoted, they were talking about poetry. And I didn't become a poet until I became a mom. And I didn't really make this connection until later, but it's because I didn't have time for an essay collection or a book manuscript. Like there was no time for any of that, like deeper thinking, but I could carve out a poem. And so it made sense when I heard these quotes. So Elizabeth Alexander said, they've talked about poetry as an art form that is a poor people's art form, which is to say you can't write a novel without a lot of time to yourself. They don't get written any other way. But I love how these women, and she's talking about Lucille Clifton and Wanda Coleman, talk about how you can snatch time to make a poem. That doesn't mean that they aren't hard to make, but it means that they are like grass or flowers coming up in the sidewalk cracks. Wanda Coleman says, I can start a poem if I'm waiting online. Poor people spend a lot of time waiting online. I couldn't write a novel waiting online, but I could start a poem. And Lucille Clifton says, the best conditions for me to write poetry are at the kitchen table. One kid's got the measles, another 2 kids are smacking each other. You know, life is going on around me. And not only is that the stuff of the poems, but also that she can snatch little tiny snippets of space for the poems. And I love that idea that every little moment in our day can be a poem, can be stolen, like Jamie mentioned, you know, to keep touching the craft that we are working on. I do this in my classroom all the time. If I give a prompt, if my students are writing a prompt, I write the prompt. It starts a poem for me, it starts an essay, whatever that does, it gets those first lines in. And then the other thing that I have a hard time doing is staying focused. Even when Sochi was introducing me, she's like, so what are you working on? I'm like, you know, like a poetry chapbook and a book manuscript, and I'm querying agents, you know. And so for me, it's really hard for me to stay focused, and that's where other writers are really helpful. Women Who Submit helps me focus on, okay, what am I submitting today? What is my priority in terms of, is it a book manuscript? Is it a couple of poems that are ready for the world? How can I keep getting that work out?
And then also Women Who Submit is great about helping celebrate the publications. Oh, okay, this poem is finally coming into the world, and having those opportunities to celebrate is really important. For me, I have imposter syndrome, like, am I really a writer? I don't know. And Women Who Submit helps me with some of that gaslighting. And also I have a writing partner. She's not here today. She's performing a wedding up in the Bay Area. But she comes to Women Who Submit, also Hazel Kite with them. And she and I used to write together before we had children, early in the morning before we went to teach for the day. And so once we had kids, we tried to keep that going, but it was really hard. And so now we just check in with each other. We both still try to get up before the day and put down some words so that our day starts with the writing, that the day starts with our craft. The end of the school year is always super hard to do that. Last day of school was Thursday. My last day was yesterday's, and I'm like, yes, I can breathe. I can have a few more minutes to write. But finding that morning time for me is time when I can get some words down. And then my evening, because I also try to carve out a little bit of time in the evening, which is more for like editing and sending like emails to presses or seeing where I'm going to query a next agent, like doing kind of the more business side is what has worked for me. Creative work in the morning and then business work in the evening, which isn't my favorite part of the writing process, but it's like part of the grind. And then also finding residencies or inexpensive writing retreats or creating an escape route for yourself to have some larger chunks of time for writing. On Monday, I get to leave for Wellstone, which is a writing residency up in Santa Cruz. My writing partner Hazel and I did this last fall, and we're doing it again, and we're going to try to do it twice a year where we get up there for a week. We found that like in a week's time, we were getting like what we were accomplishing in a year without that kind of focused time. So finding residencies, applying for them, getting yourself out there to give yourself the space for the work. So those are some of the things that help me stay sane as a writer and stay grounded in the work. Anyone else have any other, as you were listening or thinking about things that you do to keep the craft going? Yeah.
My kids are older, so I have a lot of experience in that. One thing I noticed is that I used to benefit from the writer. But there are grants now specifically, I wish there were now for parents with kids under 18. For parentis, another.
Parentis, yeah, and then there's, I forgot one.
Oh, it's, yeah, I've been rejected to it. I've been rejected for it a couple times. I can't remember what it's called.
There are those opportunities like what you said where you're writing with your students. And also writing with your kids, sometimes there's opportunities for it's tough, you know. I think having a really good support system is just, having for all of you who are like single parents, just having people in your class, 5 out of 5 attending to write, my child got out of 5 was 5.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, we don't have any family that lives near us, so it's just my husband and I. And so any help that we need, we have to hire or pay for usually, unless we relieve each other. So we've, got into the habit of relieving each other when either one of us needs to do something for ourselves that's vital. And so I don't know what I would do without my partner, because he's my main point of relief. The other thing I forgot to mention was that when you're a caregiver, caretaker, you have to know when you're pushing yourself too hard, because that can often happen where you're just pushing yourself so hard to do everything, and then you get sick or you get burnt out, or it's just not healthy. So sometimes it's okay to just say, I'm taking a step back. I'm not going to work on revising the manuscript for this month, or I'm not going to worry about writing this month. That's okay, because you're going to stay on track over the long term. So for the short term, sometimes you just have to kind of take it easy, know your limits. Yeah. Any comments or questions or frustrations?
I think that I keep the paper and pen in the car. And sometimes if I get to a place 5 minutes before I have to go in, or I'm picking someone up and they're 5 minutes late, I have 5 minutes and I just pick up that pen and paper and just sit in the car and just scribble some stuff down. And that little stuff, and I like the idea of when you do have the time to sit down. When I go back and through and look at like little scribbles that I made when I was in the kitchen, making coffee, I have some thought, just scribble it down. I can collect all those together. Sometimes there's something there.
Yeah.
And you won't even remember writing it.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I've gotten a lot better about writing things down wherever I possibly can. Record it, put it on my phone, write it on a scrap of paper, like wherever an idea, a thought, a line comes to me, I just try to get it down, because I know within 3 minutes it will be gone forever. So with my mommy brain, like I just cannot retain anything else in there. So I get it down, and then later I come back to it and I find it. I just come across it, and I don't even remember. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not bad. I have a place to jump off from.
I forgot which one said this, but like those like poetry you can do it all the time. I can't remember. Yeah. Okay, sorry. But yeah, I definitely feel that. Like, even though I don't have children, there are times when I teach, and being a teacher takes up so much time because you're with the kids and then lesson time. So you have very little time to yourself until the summer comes. And I feel like those little moments of just writing something, like little each day, it doesn't feel like a lot, but then when you do have a break and you have some time to yourself and you look at your collection and you're like, oh wow, I actually did that, and it feels really good. So when you're doing it, it doesn't feel like anything. But then when you actually get to see all of these little pieces together, then yeah, you feel it. Oh, that's what I had that.
Yeah. I also do NaNoWriMo, National Novel Learning Month in November, and then in April I always do the Poem a Day challenge. And it's amazing like what awful things I'm able to create in that short amount of time. But it's still like all these pages, and within like the awful, I'll often be like, oh well, this could be a short story, or okay, this poem's not that bad. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
I did the grind last month, and so I wrote a poem every day for the whole month. And I was talking to my husband, and I said, gosh, I wrote a poem every day last month, and I don't think I wrote one thing that I think is worth anything or that I would go back to work on. And I was feeling like kind of down on myself because I don't know about you, but like writers are really good at just always beating themselves up for not doing enough or not being enough of a writer or not being disciplined enough or whatever it might be. And he said, well, just think of it this way, you know, you got all of those bad poems out in a month, in just a month's time. It could have taken you a whole year to do that, but you did it in a month. And I was like, oh, that's why I married you.
Experienced recently that I was like, really, I don't have human children, I just have fur children, and I accidentally got into this bottle feeding kitten situation. And I realized that I could put so much focus and energy on these kittens.
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, I don't have like, maybe I have like 10% of that kind of energy when it comes to taking care of my work, what you were just saying, made me think about that. Like, anybody else struggle to, like, anybody else feel like their creativity is done, teachers, right, in other areas and you don't have anything left or for whatever reason you don't care about your writing after you put it down, like you can't nurture it?
Yeah, that's why I think we have to be super selfish about our time and like making sure we have some kind of routine that does that, because absolutely. And you don't think you have anything left? I mean, teaching and parenting and writing are things that you can always do more. You know, you can always bottle feed one more kitten, you know? Yeah, and so that idea that these are imperfect, you know, we could always be a bright, shining star in a different way. But that we have to be okay with letting go of the perfect house or the perfect kid.
You have to be okay with being absent from your children's lives for periods of time too. I mean, that's something that I had to learn to feel okay with. In the beginning, you know, I felt guilty every time I was away from my children. Now, when I leave the house, I'm like, yes! So, you know, you kind of learn to break free and that you have your own needs that are just as satisfying as taking care of your children.
And it will make you a better parent when you come back to them.
And a better
so much
role
cuter after a break.
Well, my friend Shannon, who's a singer-songwriter, she helped me a lot because she said, you have to fight. You're an artist. You have to fight for that. And you have needs, and those needs need to be fulfilled whether you have children or not. And all the people who love you have to understand that and know that. Because if you want to be a good example for your daughters of a woman who does not, you know, give up on her dreams, then you need to do that. Otherwise, you're going to not be happy and it won't be great for your kids either.
Yeah, two questions. One is a little bit into what you were just making. So I'll be going on my first long residency away from my kids. It's the first time, my oldest will be 4 years after this. So I'm just gonna ask, what was it like the first time you were like away? It was that every day, not there. And then my second question is, since my children, they're little,
very little.
Does your time and availability of time change as they get older? And yeah.
Yeah. So I find a week is like a magic amount of time. Whenever I see like 2-week residencies, I'm like, I can't do 2 weeks. Like I can't pull off 2 weeks. I'm not gonna be able to, I can't ask that of my partner. It's just too much. But a week I think is a really, it's a sweet spot because it's like he can handle things for, you know. And I miss my kids, but I'm not like, oh, I really miss my kids. Like, what's gonna happen? It's a week. So I think a week is a really good, and you'll miss them, and then you'll remember that you have other things to do, and you'll be back soon. FaceTime's really nice. I try to do that on my residencies a couple times just to reconnect. But I also have a hard time writing about being a mom. I don't do it very much. I really try to go to a different world and a different space a lot of times. So I don't know what kind of work you're working on, but you also can write about that. The experience of leaving your children is something very universal, or leaving those that we care for. And so you can also just turn it into good work. That was the first question. And read lots if you can. Like I also found that I didn't have a lot of time to read, like not just writing, but reading. What was the second one?
Whether it's
yes. Like this morning or last night, it was after the last day of school, and I was like putting together edits for an essay that's going to be coming out. My husband was kind of talking, I don't really think to me, that he might have been. And the kids were kind of doing but they weren't like pulling at me. Like they didn't need, like I wasn't nursing. They didn't physically need me in the same way that like at 2 and 4 they did. So yeah, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I'm already seeing that time piece get easier.
I'm going to tell you that there's like too, but now my son becomes my lead. I learn a lot of the writing, and a lot of the writing is about him, you know, so we talk about it a lot. That's still okay, but yeah, the time will come.
Well, and I remember the other night, my 3-year-old, I was leaving and he's like, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to go writing. And he's like, again? And I kind of love that was just part of what he saw me doing, was leaving to write, so that he saw that it was important. And I was like, it's going to always, like, it's not like it's going to be finished. This is going to be part of who I am as your mom.
I had a belief that the person after I was on, and I really think it changed how you think of you, writing about it. Some of it is about them, but as they're a little older, I ask them, you know, and I'm like, can you send the part in and out that will be harmony? He's like, no, I don't do that. But anyway, so I asked permission to go because I can come back and haunt me, and I would think this was for adults. Remember the world, so I'm kind of careful what I write about them, and I know stuff
Like you know, like put a lot of pressure on yourself to get things right or do more, and you have this one beautiful week to yourself, which is not like probably not going to pressure on yourself to do it right. You know, it's just like if you need to sleep a lot, if you haven't had time for yourself to do that. It's just you want to walk around like that, or walk reading, do that. You know, all of that is feeding your brain.
Yeah.
That's great. Everything you do is already doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
your parents, what about your parents? You guys have someone here growing up that was a writer, or how did you guys go into this journey of
Today's actually this is the day my mom passed 4 years ago, so I'm thinking of her a ton. And I was actually thinking of her as I was driving here because she went back to school when we were in college. So she and I were in college at the same time. And she didn't really, I mean, she would say that her creativity was being a mom, being a feminist mom, trying to raise us in that way. And but my grandmother on my dad's side was a writer, and she spoke Ryukyu language of the Okinawans and Japanese and English, and she won this essay contest about when she became an American citizen, and she was finally allowed. And so I think of her as my writer, like the family writer who I am channeling when I think of myself as a writer. But it has taken, my father's an engineer, my mom really identified as a mom and not really as a creative person.
My father is the primary person who kind of encouraged me to be a writer, and he's a very well-read person, but he himself never really, he didn't consider himself an artist. He was a general contractor, a builder, carpenter, while I was growing up, and he was perfectly happy doing that and having a family. And my mother, though, I think was probably somewhat frustrated in her career. She, was assuming that role of being a mom and having a family and that being her sole purpose and dream in life. But I think ultimately she felt frustrated by that because she had other desires that just she was never able to fulfill. And so, that in a lot of ways kind of has taught me that I need to stick to my path. And I think that some women are perfectly happy being a mom or being a parent, and that's it. They just want to do that. And they work, they have their kids, their family, it's great. And that's wonderful. But not everybody is that way. And you just are who you are.
There's
Yeah.
something that you're ready to start.
Yes.
The world needs your story.
And listen to that. The world needs stories, multiple voices, lots of stories. So
And that's why Women Submit is here.
Yes.
We need more women. Thanks.
all right, thank you everybody.
Thank you so much, Noriko. It was very inspiring and beautiful. Eugene is here again. He is our contact. He is the one that brought us here and is hosting us. And so he wanted to tell you a little bit about what's going on at the library. Eugene.
I want to bring your attention to our poster everywhere. We decided our summer reading program last week, and we actually